sometimes, but more in the summer. Sort of.
And what attracted you to it first? What attracted you to it first?
Just that it's different and all that, you know.
But some people around here have been calling you a poser.
They're bloody posers themselves. Keep forgetting.
Well, what is a poser? Tell me.
Well, I think it's somebody just, now and again goes out, dressed up as punk and doesn't do it all the time and all that, and just go for concerts and stuff like that.
So what does your mother think about all this?
Well, she doesn't like it, but there's nothing she can do about it, really.
And does it cost a lot?
No, not really. You can wear old clothes and just sort of...
Well, I hear that some people go out with kettles as handbags.
That's ridiculous. I think it's stupid. There's nothing more ridiculous looking than seeing somebody walking about with a kettle in their hand.
You're not into that sort of thing then?
Not the kettles.
Well, what's punk fashion for you?
Just wearing what you like and sort of...
Oh, what about the music? Why do you like it?
I like the music because it's different. I mean, it's a lot different from the ordinary rock. The groups really say what they want to say and express themselves how they like.
What did you do before punk?
Nothing really. It's the first thing I've really been into, as such.
What was it that made you first be attracted to punk?
Because it is the alternative for working class youth in Northern Ireland today. It is the only thing for ordinary people, not middle class, not upper class people, for people like me.
And me, I'd second that.
Oh, sorry.
Do you mean that it's given you something to identify
Yeah, it gives me
with?
something to identify with. It's the only, before punk came about, all music was for people with Big Daddy at the bank account, and he was able to buy them £2,000 keyboards. This is for raw music, what it started from, for kids.
And the roof racks epitomise it.
And it's about, not only about fun, it's also about politics.
Well, they bandy this word anarchy about.
Yeah, well, but the most of the people who use anarchy as being punks usually don't know what it means. But it means enjoying yourself and not caring about what anybody else says to you, what anybody wants. You be yourself. You don't care about what anybody else wants you to be.
What about the obscenity and...
Yeah, well, the
So say all about.
The obscenity
So say all about.
it's often overrated. It's people read it in News of the World and the Sun and believe everything they read.
And then they're going to
They're total are absolute lies. Fair enough. Come on. Fair enough. There is.
Okay, Aidan, so what did you do before punk came along?
Nothing much. There's no decent music about really that I could sort of identify with. It was all this boring stuff, I thought. Then when punk came, it's just good music, good lyrics. That's what I liked about it.
What in fact do you identify with? Is it the lyrics or the beat or music?
It's both really, I think. I mean, the lyrics are more realistic in the punk than they were in the other type of music. And the other type of music was just sort of, I can see stars in your eyes. It's just more realistic now, I think. And the music's more exciting.
What sort of things are the lyrics talking about that you feel you can identify with?
Well, the situation as it is today, I think, the hate in some people and discrimination and about career opportunities. Like, I'm alright, because I'm not employed or anything, but there's other people, and there's some people who just don't want to know about people who are unemployed or anything like that there. But you just can't sit and forget about those people, I don't think.
Well, I don't go out to go to a punk rock concert to shock people, I mean, if people are shocked, it just shows how, really sort of boring they are, the kind of people that go up to you in the street and sort of call you an idiot. They're just like dogs, if they see something strange, they tilt their head to the side and sort of, instead of barking, they just come up and hopefully just call you an idiot or, kick you or something. We don't mean to shock. I just like the dress, it's good fun. It might shock boring kind of people, but I've always tried to shock those boring kind of people before punk came along. I liked shocking those kind of people anyway, so I don't mind. Well, the thing about that it's happened all the time. Well, yeah, we're not saying we've discovered, sort of I am James Dean, you know, I mean, it's always happened, but we're doing it now, so I don't care about anybody else. I'm doing it now, so I don't mind.
Do you meet much hostility from the adults that are around you, the authority?
Yeah, especially ones that wear police caps. I meet quite a lot of hostility from those kind of people.
What do you think about the people who say that punk rock is violent?
Well, that's just a convenient way for them to put it down, because they can't put it down any other way. And we are trying to shock them, to wake them up, because they think they've got everything laid on for us with youth clubs. Youth clubs are for people who play badminton, not for us. We've got nothing. The only thing we can do is shock them, to wake them up.
The politics of punk as such are that you have a disaffected younger generation. These are the kids, I suppose you could say it started in England, because suddenly the "you never had it so good" society has disappeared, and a lot of kids are finding themselves coming out of school and colleges with no jobs, and they're in the dole queue, and the heroes that they would normally find in pop music are now in their late 30s or early 40s. So they started to look, I think, for something that expressed, however badly, their feelings about life in general. It's the old story of teenagers reacting against the standards of their parents, although in this case perhaps not just their parents, their older brothers and sisters even, you know.
Because it is the first wave really that's shown me that there is a generation gap between me and my cousin who's 50.
Yeah, the first time I took any interest in punk rock music was I was walking through the reporter's office in my paper, and I heard some of the reporters talking about a pop show that went out the previous night, and these were people in their late 20s, and they were using phrases like, that was rubbish, we couldn't make out the lyrics, they can't even play in tune, and they were really angry about it. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, those punk rock bands last night. So I thought to myself, I remember my parents saying that when I was about 14, you know, about Elvis Presley.
There are some kids screaming about being deprived, and I talked to one and he turned out to live up Malone Road and go to public school.
You know, it's very easy to criticise. You're bound to get two things happening in a movement like this. You're going to get the lunatic fringe, those are the people who are responsible for the violence that's hit the headlines, and you also get the people who want to perhaps identify and cash in on what's happening. Now, it's quite possible that that kid from the Malone Road who goes to Inst won't be able to get a job when he leaves school anyway. He's certainly not hungry at the moment, but he is disaffected. He is annoyed at what has happened perhaps in Northern Ireland, things that his people of his parents' age were responsible for. No, I mean, you're certainly going to get a lot of people perhaps not genuinely deprived who want to get in on the act for one reason or another. Perhaps they mistakenly feel they're deprived, perhaps they presume that they will be deprived one day. But it's just one of those things, it's bound to happen. Applying our standards to them, and they of course reject our standards. In fact, anything I say, they'll immediately reject anyway, because I'm going to sound patronising no matter what I say. The therapy as such of punk fans at a concert, and I've seen it work, it's a controlled aggression, it's letting off steam, it's screaming for 3 hours. People used to scream at the Beatles for 3 hours, you know. Same idea, but in a slightly different context. That's the context of the violent 70s. And certainly people may be alarmed to see kids dancing and banging their heads against one another. But I personally have never seen anybody fighting during a punk concert, and they all seem to have a very good time, which is what rock music is about.
But they're glazing over the questions. I mean, they're screaming about unemployment, about being bored. They're not doing anything about it.
Yeah, but surely you're asking 14 and 15-year-olds to come up with political solutions. I mean, that just doesn't wash.
Well, isn't this the joke, punk government?
Right, it's a joke. I mean, everything they say is meant to shock people like you and I. They're certainly not going to come out with a manifesto on the politics or the government of Great Britain. At the moment it appears very negative, but what they're doing, I think, is just welding themselves into one unit. They have something now to identify with, and that's each other.
Austin, you were the first person to try and bring a punk band over here, but you had a rather unhappy experience.
That's right. I booked the clash for October. We brought them over, and then everything was going great up to about the week before. Great press reviews. Everybody was happy to see the clash coming over. Then during that week, everything went bad. The press sort of took on the idea that there was going to be violence at the concert and everything like that. Then on the exact day they were due to play, we were informed that there was going to be no insurance at all. And we phoned up Lloyd's, the main underwriters for insurance, and we found out that they considered that punk in Belfast was more dangerous than anywhere else in Great Britain. So unfortunately we had to cancel the whole affair, and there was a lot of punks in Belfast very annoyed and disappointed not seeing the clash. And it was a devastating experience, I think, for everybody, you know, in all the punks around the place. I'd just like to also say, you know, that everybody's raving on about punk and the bands and how great they are for the punks, but everybody seems to miss the point that they're charging money like £2,500 or £1,000 per gig, and this is taken away from the original idea, this principle of playing for the kids, letting the kids from the streets come along. And the bands now are just, you know, they're heroes, they're giants, which we originally were against.
The change of image has brought its own problems for pretty boy Floyd. While playing in a dance hall in Newry, the crowd, who were not punk fans and had apparently expected a conventional show band, took exception to the music, and in a dance hall roughhouse, 2 members of the band were injured. At the risk of sounding naive, because I guess you might have rigged it for publicity, what happened in Newry?
Well, it's like this. The crowd got very sort of hostile, you know, and there were a few guys throwing cans at us, you know, so I thought I'd go down and talk to them, and they must have thought I was going to attack them, you know, it must have looked that way, and they just piled on top of us, that was it, you know, and we just had to get out of the place as soon as we could.
Were they punk audience?
No, they weren't, no. There wasn't one punk there at all. It's a classic example of misinterpretation on the crowd's behalf of what the band was actually trying to project. I think people seem to think that violence is what we're trying to create by our appearance. This is not the case.
But rock and roll itself is very basic, very raw, and it has always been all through the years that it has elicited this response from crowds.
Yeah, well, the response we want is for people to get the energies and frustrations that they build up during the week out through other means than violence.
So what about the lyrics? They seem to be violent. Would not a violent reaction from the audience be predictable?
Well, that is a perfect example of what went wrong in Newry. Misinterpretation again. It's only meant to be symbolic, representative of what's happening and what has always been happening. It's not a request for people to be violent. We're only playing with words.
Well, now you play very well. You're a very good group. You're very competent, and you've been playing a lot of different styles of music over the years. Why now did you turn to punk? Was it a commercial enterprise or not?
There's no point denying that it is partially a commercial enterprise. Punk isn't that we've changed to punk. I think it's that we've progressed to punk. We're not forgetting anything that we've used before. Matter of fact, we're incorporating it to help to make up what we have at the moment.
Surely punk music is a lot more simple. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Basic, not simple. It's using the basic roots of rock and roll.
A lot of kids get on stage and think that they can play it after one night. What do you say to those kids?
Well, we've been playing it for a long time and we still can't play it right.
Someone who has been converted to punk music and believes in its commercial potential is record producer George Docherty. George, what is your attitude to punk music as a man who's in a position to see these various phases of music come and go?
My attitude is that I think it's a very healthy thing for the kids today, because you remember when we were younger we had the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and since then they've had nothing like that until this new wave music has come along, you know.
George, let's be honest, there's slightly more obscenity and tastelessness in punk than there ever was in our music.
Yeah, but as well as that, there's a lot of good music comes out of it, and I think there's a lot more good music to come out of it. I think we've seen it at its early basic stages. The obscenity will gradually disappear. It has to disappear, I think. Otherwise there won't be venues for the bands to play. And when that happens, I think we're going to see a lot of good music. Well, talking about punk here in Ulster, some of the punk bands that I've spoken to are worried that the recording companies in Ulster are not knowledgeable enough about punk to be able to produce the right punk sound. There are those who say that you're more used to country and western sounds, and in fact, you're making them sound like country and western. What do you say to that? Well, I think they haven't been to this studio yet then, and I think that when they come here, and certainly at the moment I'm looking for punk groups, that they're going to find something that's going to really surprise them. Well, how do you get the right punk sound? What is the punk sound? I don't know. It's in the same way that you might ask me how I get the right country sound. I really don't know. I just feel it as it happens. And I haven't been too far wrong yet. How many punk recordings really have you made so far? I've done Pretty Boy Floyd and the Gems, Doogie Briggs band, a band called Speed, who've now broken up unfortunately due to the fact that they couldn't get gigs, and a band called Midnight Cruiser. And to come, I have a band called The Outcasts, Rudi, and one that I really fancy called Stiff Little Fingers. In your opinion, are there any Ulster bands who could be really big in the punk field? If you ask me to back that with money, I would say Pretty Boy Floyd and the Gems are without doubt the best one that I've recorded yet. Did you really think that punk was going to be commercially successful when it first came out? No, I've got to admit I didn't. Like most of the record companies, I was a bit sceptical, but I think now it's proven itself. I've been working on it only since last March, and it just seems to get bigger and bigger. And everybody says it's about to finish. I don't think so. I think you're about to see just the start of something that's going to go on for 4 or 5 years. Is there anything about punk that you really can't take? Yes, I think, I can't stand the violence and people spitting on the group. You heard the story the other day about the Sex Pistols. This girl in America comes up and she hits the lead guitarist on the face, and the blood's dripping from his nose and he spreads it over his chest, and she says, I love him so much that I just really had to do it. I thought, well, if she loves me that much, I prefer her to kiss me and not smack me on the face.
What do you think about punk releases like Myra Hindley, Release Myra Hindley by the Moors Murderers? Sort of tastelessness that is.
I don't agree with that at all. That's just cashing in. I mean, it's a year old now, and if groups start now with that sort of rubbish, it's just cashing in. You know, I mean, they're deliberately trying to shock people, but that's sick as far as I'm concerned.
You seem to suggest that punk rock has developed in the past year away from the more shocking aspects. To what?
Well, I think it's more, people are taking more interest in the music now that the shock bits died down. And they try to say that none of the groups can play anything, but that's not true. Some of them are very good.
Is punk rock in any way political? And I mean that in the broadest sense of that word.
Well, it's only political in that it breaks down various barriers like racism. It's completely against racism and bigotry, and it's especially relevant for Belfast because it unites Protestants and Catholics, and it breaks down all religious barriers like that. And that's the side of it that nobody wants to talk about, because that's the good side of it, and that's one of the points nobody wants to talk about.
Where do you see punk going from here?
I think by definition it can't last all that long for various reasons. One, that the kids will grow up, perhaps their situation will get better, they'll start to get jobs. Secondly, because, as I said before, big business is already starting to move in. I mean, if you're a punk rock group and you want other people to hear your music, you're going to have to sign a recording contract, and once you do that, you are selling out in a way. I think that perhaps a year, the term punk will then start to move out of our ken, but it will have, I think it will have served its purpose, and that is, it's kicked rock music up the backside, which it has sorely needed for a long time, you know.
I think that punk rock in Northern Ireland is going to go from strength to strength, and you know, I can see nothing but a bright future for it, and I think that eventually the groups will gain acceptance, and a lot of people who at the moment would like to brush it under the carpet are going to find that they'll have no alternative but to book punk bands, because they are the bands that's going to bring the excitement and the crowds back.